I have done it. I have done something that I didn't think was possible, which is break my own record of weekly procrastination. I'm currently filming the video that you're watching 12:10 a.m. the day of. What can I say? I love danger. You thought I was going to pre-film before I traveled to California last week? Absolutely not. I was jet lagged. Also, I had the worst, just mind-numbing, piercing migraine. And then I took some ibuprofen and I went to bed. Now I'm awake to talk about the ultimatum because I just have a lot of feelings. Didn't it seem like we were just talking about the ultimate? Well, I guess we were. We were talking about Ultimatum Queer Love. That was what, maybe 2 months ago? They're really churning them out, man. So yes, here we are to talk about more bad decisions that other people made for our entertainment. But before we get into that, we're going to send it over to Admiral Kennie because she has contractual obligations. Hello everyone, this is Admiral Kennie and today's video is sponsored by Raycon. Raycon's everyday earbuds look, feel, and sound better than ever. They have style, performance, long playtime, great sound quality, but at about half the price of other premium audio brands. Optimized gel tips make sure that you get the perfect fit for your ear holes so that they are comfortable, so that they fit well, and most importantly, so they don't come out of your ear, which is particularly hard now that I have a tragus piercing because earbud headphones like to play me. The buds themselves have an 8-hour playtime, the case 32 hours. There's 3 customizable sound profiles. There's something more clear, there's something more balanced, but personally, I'm a bass girl. I like to feel it in my chest. Popping, locking. Sorry. They're so cute, travel friendly. I'm going to take them with me on my little vacation I'm about to go on to. So it'd be great to have that long playtime. On a pretty decent length flight, it's going to be like 5 hours. So I would hate for my headphones to conk out on me when I'm trying to get work done in a plane. And if you don't take my word for it, feel free to take the word of over 78,000 5-star reviews, baby. So if you would like to check out Raycon, they're having an annual back to school sale right now. And for a limited time, you can get 20% off the entire website plus free shipping. Big thanks again to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get on to the debauchery, baby. All right, so the ultimatum, season 2, we're back at it, baby. If you're confused, yes, this is technically season 2 of the main ultimatum, not including the spin-off, which was the Ultimatum Queer Love, which we talked about a few months ago, which was like an ultimatum focused on AFAB people. This is the continuation of the first season that happened like a year-ish ago, which I made a video on when that first came out because it was a befuddling mess. Last time I checked, I think it has 1 million views. Why? I've obviously done videos on both of those because I love garbage and chaos. For the uninitiated, the Ultimatum is a reality show where couples come on with a person within the relationship issuing an ultimatum. Either we get engaged at the end of this show or I leave you. These couples all gather together, subject themselves to the laches, and undergo a quote-unquote experiment in which they meet other couples, swap partners for 3 weeks in an effort to have a sort of trial marriage. And after said trial, they move back in with their original partners and see what's different, see if they learned anything from the experiences, comparing the 2 experiences. And hopefully by the end of this, everyone can reach a conclusion about what they want, if they want to get engaged to their original partner, if they want to leave single, or perhaps start a relationship of some sort with the new person that they met on the show. As I've said time and time again, this sounds like a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea to do this to your relationship, especially on reality TV. But since people keep answering the casting call, I'm gonna watch it. With that said, as a reminder to everyone, including myself, this is a reality show, an edited, curated, constructed piece of media for the consumption of trash TV lovers like us. So any opinions I have are based on whatever is shown and isn't necessarily the most accurate conclusions to reach, considering we don't see everything, we'll never know the whole picture. So regardless of what villains, quote unquote, we see on screen, the true villains here are the production team. Let's never forget that. Again, including myself. But with that said, there are people who are objectively wildin' this season, I think, in a way that editing can only exaggerate so much. I think some of y'all just be wildin'. So today, We're talking about the first 5 episodes. We're going to meet this season's cast, watch the majority of the first trial marriages, and then next week we'll come back, talk about the second half of the season, which will include the finale, the choices that people make for the ultimatum, as well as the reunion. That being said, at the time of filming, those episodes are live. I have not seen them. If you have seen episodes 6 through 10 and you're like, Kendall, what are you talking about? They did blah, 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 blah. I didn't know because I didn't watch it. I only watched episode 1 through 5. So with that said, as I watch more episodes, my opinions on casts or situations are subject to change. Let's talk about the casts and some first impressions I had about each of them. First off, we have Kat and Alex. Boring and weird respectively. Actually, no. Alex is weird and boring. They're both not the most emotionally expressive, notably dry. Kat seems nice. Maybe a bit of a pushover. And Alex is just weird. Like, he's weird. And in a very, like, intangible way. Dry, has this sort of looming condescension that's kind of hard to put my finger on. It's not always the most verbal thing in the world, but it's usually worse when it is. Icky vibe about him that I can't quite put my finger on. Again, I feel no particular way about Kat. She seems nice. She also is the person that issued the ultimatum. Ryan and James. Okay, Ryan and James are high school sweethearts that have been together for the last 7 years. And James is Ryan's only boyfriend that she's ever had, ever. Which I do not recommend. Though it could work, and I've seen it work, but I struggle to see how relationships that formed when you're 16 are conducive to personal development and growth. She seems really nice, really bubbly. She admits that she's not great at articulating how she feels. So that becomes a particularly contentious point with James, who is a bit closed off, seemingly due to his childhood trauma. I don't know if he's in therapy or doing anything in regards to that, but I hope he gets on that if he's not already. But Ryan issued the ultimatum. Next up, we have Raya and Trey. They seem nice separately, but my thing is it's very obvious that they both want different things and they're trying to put together puzzle pieces that don't make sense. I think for the purposes of trying to create this very traditional marriage with Raya, he's ignoring like what she's saying. He kind of ignores her very reasonable concerns she has about marriage and settling down when she's still trying to figure out who she is, what she wants to do. He seems to be very settled financially, and I think he thinks that marriage is like that next step for him. And in feeling that way, I think he doesn't necessarily consider that Raya isn't there yet. She's a few years younger than him, admittedly a bit immature, but also she's 24 or something like that. Like, it's so young. To me, these just seem like two people who have conflicting aspirations and desires, and I think you should break up. That's just how I feel about it. Trey is the one who issued the ultimatum, by the way. Roxanne and Antonio. Basically, Roxanne, to me, and again, according to editing and whatnot, Roxanne is like a stereotype, a caricature of like a girl boss on crack. Every third word she says is about business, the grind, how the grind never stops, hustling. And she uses these words unironically, which is painful to listen to, especially more than once, especially over and over and over again. Like, we get it. You work. We all do, bitch. And then that type of person is dating Antonio, who is a very poignantly insecure guy, particularly in the conversation around making a lot of money, being successful in that way, and being a guy who has all the answers, this company owner, this guy with a lot of money and ambition and blah, blah, blah. And both of them agree that Antonio isn't really that guy. So Antonio is constantly feeling like he's not enough for her. Antonio is the one issuing the ultimatum. He wants to marry Roxanne, but Roxanne doesn't even know if she wants to get married, because as a boss bitch, entrepreneur, gas keep, girl light, what is it? Queen, she feels like marriage kind of takes away from that independent identity and would probably make her feel less of a boss bitch. Now, if she didn't only talk about business in the show, I would find her less annoying, because I do sympathize with some of those concerns that she has. Like, I think about that sometimes when I'm like, do I want to get, like, what am I gaining through getting married? In many ways, women who are very independent end up getting kind of conned by marriage. At least that's how I feel about it. End up getting like subjugated through marriage. Like, what do I, a woman that can provide for myself, what do I get out of marriage in this very traditional sense that I couldn't just get from a long-term relationship? You know what I mean? So I've had those thoughts. So I understand where that's coming from. But it's grating. It's like, do you have a hobby? Do you have a sport? Do you do anything? Like, and Antonio, I get the feeling, is trying to push her into being in this committed relationship with him because he feels very insecure. He feels like he's constantly on the brink of losing her. He feels like he's not good enough for her, yada, yada, yada. And it seems like he's issuing the ultimatum as if that's going to fix any of the fundamental issues they have, which, spoiler, I doubt it. And last but not least, we have Lisa and Brian. Okay, well, Lisa issued the ultimatum, and you'll see the rest. Episode 1. So you know the deal at this point if you've watched the ultimatum. We're going to bring all the couples in. We're going to bring all of them together. They're going to get talked at by the Lachey's, which, if I recall correctly, I thought they were fired. Well, I know they got fired from Love is Blind. I guess maybe not the ultimatum. Granted, these are probably, I know they're obviously like pre-filmed. So, but it's the last night with the couples. They're saying like their goodbyes and everything. The first couple that kind of stands out to me is Raya and Trey. Side note, Raya is very, very pretty. But anyway, Raya's not sure what she wants long term. She doesn't have her dream job. She doesn't feel settled. She doesn't feel like she can take care of herself. She doesn't know if she wants marriage. She doesn't know if she wants kids. And it seems like Trey, again, is just ignoring her. I just think you're afraid. I just think you're not ready to take the leap. Babe, listen to her. I'm not sure about this. And you making the decision for her doesn't make her any more sure, okay? But he's kind of like, my parents have been married for 30 plus years. I want that for myself. But I don't think he's thinking about feasibly and realistically who he would have the most productive and compatible marriage with. He's just like, I've been dating her for 2 years and I love her, so let's get married. Like, no. She then brings up the possibility that she may not want kids in their marriage. And so she asked him, like, if I woke up one day and said I don't want kids, would you still want me? I just want to be with you, which isn't an answer to the question. And it was getting, again, very frustrating that he wouldn't give a direct answer. Eventually, he's like, I mean, if you didn't want kids, I don't know, I'd have to think about that. That'd be hard. It seems like they haven't really discussed kids in general, which is like, you should not be even anywhere near talking about marriage and y'all haven't talked about whether or not you want kids. Honestly, whether or not you want kids should have been a conversation y'all had easily within the first year. I'd say even earlier. I'm not saying with this particular person, but in my life, do I see myself as a parent is a pretty early question I think you should ask, honestly. How'd y'all get into 2 years and y'all have yet to ask about that? That's interesting. What do y'all talk about? Yeah, y'all need to break up. Honestly, everybody should break up in this show. If anyone came to this show, y'all should break up. If you feel like you need to go on the ultimatum, that's your sign that y'all should break up. The second couple that stood out to me is Lisa and Brian. There are signs pretty early that Lisa is not fully prepared for this experience, despite her being the person that issued the ultimatum. Whereas Brian seems, at least on camera, maybe not, we don't know their whole relationship, but he just seems to be like pacifying her for as long as possible and, you know, like pushing off their inevitable end.
You're trying to decide if you don't want to get married, or is it me?
You mean, or are you the one that I want to get married to?
Right.
No, I don't think it's that.
It's like pretty obvious that there's going to be some bullshit happening, because in the middle of the night, she's like, I want to go home. I don't even want to be here. Like, this is terrible. Like, I want to go home. And I'm like, oh, baby, you are not ready for this. Like, you are not ready for it. Like, you crying this hard. The dating ain't even started. Y'all ain't even technically break up yet. In the morning, Brian brings up that he is a bit concerned about how Lisa will be in situations where she will see him interacting with other women. He will be dating other women, flirting with other women, and she will be within earshot of that. I'm not sure how you will handle it. And when I first heard that, I thought that was a bit strange. I was like, well, theoretically both of you could handle it poorly. But then the more they talk and the more that she kind of reacts to that made me think, like, does she have a bit of a history of being a bit aggressive?
I feel like I
I'm
get
not saying
an appropriate level of upset.
An appropriate level.
Yes.
So it's justifiable.
Yes.
In every instance.
In most cases.
So everyone's now broken up. They all have, you know, the little pool party that they have every show. Everything gets really messy when there's a bunch of alcohol in a pool party. And this is when they start to make their connections. Raya starts connecting with James because they both have common childhood trauma, honestly, and they find that they're able to open up to each other. She also connects with Brian because she thinks he's hot, which Lisa notices and isn't great at ignoring and not getting upset. Trey and Ryan seem to have a lot in common. They are both from the same area in South Carolina. Roxanne and Alex connect because they both focus on the grind. I really like her hair though. I don't know if those are like extensions for volume or just beautiful head of hair, but it's just so good. I need to look into like a very thick wig. I want my hair to look like that. Anyway, Antonio is connecting with Kat because honestly that's who's left. They seem to be very similar on a very superficial level. Pushovers, both of them. That night, they have the cocktail party, which is where things get intense because now they're watching each other with even more alcohol in their system, dating each other in an even closer proximity. They ask each other who their best dates were, who they're feeling right now. Some people are more vocal about that. Some people are less vocal. But of all the people discussing everything, it is pretty apparent that Lisa is the person who's struggling most with this experience. So much so that Brian goes to Lisa, takes her to the side because she seems to be getting more and more upset that there's something brewing possibly between Brian and Raya. And Lisa gets upset. She's like, I'm starting to feel like it shouldn't be this hard. I shouldn't have to bring you on a show, give you an ultimatum. I'm struggling with the thought of another woman flirting with you, touching you, sleeping in the bed next to you, etc. You brought him here. This was your do you know how many steps you have to get through to get on the show? How many hurdles you have to jump over to get here? Bitch, this is your fault. What you blaming him for? She's crying and he reminds her like, hey, there's a reason we're here. We came here for a reason. We came here to figure out what we want. I don't remember what exactly was said, but there was something between their interaction that made me have a theory. I have no evidence for this. I have no idea. My theory though is that he cheated on her in the past. So seeing him with another woman in front of her face is incredibly triggering, which makes sense, which is why I say break up with people. Break up. If they cheat on you, break up. Now we doing all this crying on national television when you could have just been broken up with this motherfucker and you could have dated somebody else however many years ago and maybe found the love of your life. But yeah, she separates, but she's still not taking this experience very well. She gets even more triggered and frustrated when she sees Raya and Brian talking separate again. And so she has the most fiery outburst I've seen on one of these shows, where she goes up to interrupt him and her on their date. She makes Raya super uncomfortable, and then baby Lisa gets mad. Probably the maddest I've seen anybody on one of these shows. Like, you on this experience to learn something? What you gonna learn from the Hooters, bitch? And I don't think she loves her man, and now you gonna try to learn something quote unquote from her. She goes up to him, she mushes him in the face. I was like, oh, this is ghetto. I was stunned. I was like, what is this, VH1? What is happening? But as you can imagine, things are getting very spicy in the kitchen. And so they figured that we should go on to the next episode, episode 2. With episode 1 ending in such a flourish, I knew that, of course, episode 2 is going to be a continuation of the chaos. Lisa storms off. She's screaming about how she wants to go home. She starts getting really nasty and misogynistic, calling her easy, calling her a female, you know, this female, that type thing. She says she has no brain. She has nothing to offer him. Dense. She can't teach you anything in this experience. It's very presumptuous. Outside of just the nasty misogynistic bullshit, they ain't even choose people yet. He don't know her. Like, baby, he don't know what he can learn from anything. We don't know what you can learn from anything. He don't know her. But anyway, luckily she leaves because it was getting very gross. Weird, gross. All the hoops that you have to jump through to get on a show, you would think that you thought about what that means to be on the show, especially when you brought him here. But anyway, but she's gone. Eventually, Brian goes back into the cocktail party. He just, things are awkward, admittedly, but they continue going on their dates. Roxanne and Alex are still connecting over the grind. He says to her, like, we're very similar. And me and Kat weren't. She didn't really challenge me, and you're a challenge, and I like that, which is what a man says when he lies. Antonio and Kat talk about jealousy through this process. Basically, like, how are you feeling? And this is where we hear more about Antonio, his insecurities around being less successful than Roxanne in like a financial sense, which tends to be like a reoccurring theme for him, feeling insecure and not enough for her and feel like he always has to try to reach her expectations when that may just simply not be who he is. Kat is also trying to work on how she kind of emotionally shuts down and is a bit too accommodating for Alex, who just seems to be, I don't know, someone that feels as if he finds himself very self-important. It doesn't feel like self-esteem per se. It just feels like, again, this kind of vaguely condescending, and it's hard to put my finger on. I don't even know if I could find any clips really to represent it, but it's just off-putting. I could see why he would be with a person like Kat who doesn't seem to, again, challenge that. Sure, he'll say, like, I like how Roxanne is challenging me, but in the day-to-day, people like Alex who give me this very, like, self-important vibe don't like anyone that nicks at that. They don't actually like a challenge. They just like to say they do. So it makes complete sense why him and a person like Kat who's too accommodating would be together, you know what I mean? And same for Roxanne and Antonio. Again, Antonio seems to kind of like fall on the sword for Roxanne all the time. Raya and James keep connecting, getting closer. Again, they have similar backgrounds. They were both raised in single parent households, had, less than ideal upbringings. James is sharing a lot about his emotions and family, is not something that he feels like he can do with his original partner, Ryan. So this is like really ground shaking for him because he's able to build this very natural emotional connection with Raya. I will say of all the couples, they seem to be the one that's getting the most like natural connection. But with that said, she's still into Brian. Since everything with Lisa and her outburst happened, it seems like things have been, awkward, a bit closed off. While Raya's talking to Brian, she brings up her fears around having kids. And this is where we find out that she had actually been pregnant before 2 years ago, but she never heard a heartbeat. And so she has a lot of fears around pregnancy and kids, fear of losing a baby again. Completely and utterly understandable. That's a traumatic thing. I am curious to what degree Trey was an emotional support in that time, if he was even around in that time. Speaking of Trey, despite Lisa's outburst, he's still going on dates with her and admits that he actually very, very much so likes her. She admits that she was being quite rude to Raya, but she ends up chalking her completely inappropriate outbursts up to being, just passionate. But he's also into Raya, who is, a very different personality than Lisa, whereas Lisa's very like hot-headed, it would seem. Ryan seems to be quite chill. I could see that also being an issue because she admits that she's not great at expressing her emotions well. Before you know it, it's time for the choosing dinner, where we're gonna pick our new couples, and they all walk in, except for one couple who is missing. You want to guess what couple it is? It's Lisa and Brian, absolutely. They have decided that they are going to leave the experience. Apparently the Lachey's or the production team or whatever had invited them to come to this event, but they declined.
Lisa came to us and informed us
She had better not. I swear to God,
that she had taken a pregnancy test.
Fucking hell. Why is it that whenever you see the most like batshit unstable relationship, that's when everybody wants to get pregnant or ends up getting pregnant? This shit is exhausting. Episode 3. So this episode begins with us seeing Lisa tell Brian about her pregnancy. He seems happy, I guess. Certainly surprised, maybe concerned. At least one positive thing they did is that they ended up talking about how they both understand that this doesn't mean anything as far as like them getting closer to an engagement, feeling like this fixes all of their problems. But Lisa is like, I hope that this pregnancy allows him to see I am the woman that he is building a life with, which I would argue is the same thing. It's the same thing as thinking that you will get to a better conclusion via a pregnancy. So back at the choosing table, they find out who they're going to choose. Now that Lisa is gone, the only other person that Trey was focusing on was Ryan. They have a lot of common. They seem to be very similar. They choose each other. It makes sense. And then, in a beautiful sense of irony, Raya and James also connected, and they choose each other in a sort of a partner swap type thing. They connected emotionally again because they had similar upbringing. They were able to connect about things that he isn't able to open up about with Ryan. Even though they've been dating for 7 years, he was able to do it in like a week with Raya because they have so much in common. So Kat and Antonio get together, and Roxanne and Alex get together again in another direct swap. One, because Lisa and Brian are gone, but also that just seems to be how it was naturally going anyway. You have two people who unironically believe that the grind never stops, and two people that are kind of in the shadow of their partners. So our new marriages are James and Raya, Ryan and Trey, Roxanne and Alex, and Kate and Antonio. So thus begins the new couples, and for 3 weeks they will do their trial marriage. You know the drill. They move into an apartment together, they figure out life together, figure out chores together, figure out their schedules together, all that jazz. When Kate and Antonio move in, Antonio is quick to talk about how scared he is by this experience because admittedly Alex, the guy that his ex is now with, is the personification of all of his insecurities. Alex is driven, financially stable, and that scares him. His girlfriend is going to be with a person like that, a person that mentally she sees herself with more than she sees herself with me. When it's time for them to go to bed, he chooses to not share the bed with her and instead sleep on an air bed in the living room, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the first time I've ever seen anyone do that. Sure, you know, have your boundaries or whatever, but I feel like if you're not even gonna share a bed with this person, to what degree are you even seeing this even marginally a real intimate marriage? You seem to be very standoffish from, you know, seeing what you could want out of this experience, what you could learn out of this experience. You're just kind of like holding a place until Roxanne figures out whether she wants you or not, as opposed to you figuring out what you want from a relationship via being with Kat. Meanwhile, Alex and Roxanne talk about what they want out of life outside of a career. For once, finally. She says that she sees herself, you know, in 20 years or something, 20, 30 years with 2 kids, being an empty nester and traveling the world with her hubby. Notably, it's the first time that she's said explicitly that she sees a husband in that future. So maybe her ideas around marriage are starting to shift. They also discuss butt stuff. And he says, yeah, I mean, I've tried it. And she's like, ooh, I never thought you'd be like the wild type. Like, I've never done it before. Is that wild? I guess for the average, like, cishet couple, anything revolving around the butt is like, oh my god, it's a booty hole. Meanwhile, James is in his head when it comes to being in the same bed as Raya, instead of just like getting in the bed and cuddling up, which seems to be the pretty standard thing that people do on this show. People don't tend to have a lot of problems to do that, at least being in the same bed together. But he's uncomfortable with it and he decides to go for a run to clear his head. Then later we hear him talking to his friend about how it's just now sunk in that he could lose Ryan after he heard Trey at the choosing table talk about all these great qualities that she has. Now she's going to be living with someone who sees all those great qualities, and he's like, oh my god, I could lose her. Why do men never do right until they think you about to leave? When you don't care no more, when you ready to go. They've been together 7 years, but he hears one night that somebody could enjoy his girlfriend, and now he's like, oh my god, I could possibly lose her? That's crazy. I just genuinely didn't think that was ever possible because I've been her whole world the entirety of our relationship. He doesn't say exactly that, but that's the gist of it. He started crying and shit. I'm like, oh, here we go. Episode 4. This episode begins with Raya and James playing a very like sexually flirtatious card game, which is a big emotional shift from the last episode, the end of the last episode, because it seemed like James was very standoffish. But here he's having this whole spiel about the importance of foreplay, and I will say he has the right idea. Not that I would know, I'm a virgin. And I thought this was going to be like a bit of a hint that him and Raya perhaps are gonna like venture into the danger zone a little bit, you know, despite him saying how much he loves and wants to be with Ryan. Like, I wonder, will they like get a bit more physical, being that he is technically broken up with Ryan, and later we'll hear Ryan say that she never told him he couldn't do anything like physical. He can explore as much as he needs to. He's a grown man, you know, whatever you need to make your decision, do that. So I was sitting here, I was wondering like, oh, are they about to like venture into... Speaking of which, they end up going in a hot tub together. He does this romantic date for her, puts rose petals and candles and shit, because one of her big gripes about her last relationship with Trey is that they didn't go on dates. They didn't have romance, have affection. Like, she was missing all of those things that give you the butterflies, that make you feel wanted and desired and considered. And James in the post interview is kind of saying like, yeah, Raya's hot, which she is. She's very pretty. I will say, I started to notice he is very well built. I'm a fan. I don't feel one way or another about him as a personality, but his shoulders, his ass. Honestly, my type is just tall. Like, I tend to be attracted to tall and stocky. I end up dating tall and skinny. Tall, skinny dudes that look like if I blow on them too hard, they'll fall over and die. Anyway, moving on. Antonio talks more about his anxiety that he feels around the possibility of losing Roxanne. He had a passive addiction of some sort. He doesn't say of what, but he does basically say that for a lengthy amount of time, years upon years, he spent most of his time kind of just numbing himself with drugs and sex. He just wanted to feel something, but he just felt so empty. And now that he's on the other side of that, he's able to recognize that for what it was. Another person, I really hope you're in therapy. I hope you're not using Roxanne as like a placeholder for those obsessions and addictions. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying I don't know. He just seems very intense. So then in this episode, we start meeting parents. Roxanne meets Alex's parents. They talk, you guessed it, about business and how Alex ultimately has her thinking about how marriage could actually help with that. How they're a good emotional support and make you look good, make you look more reliable. Ew. And I'm like, oh my God, they are so boring. Like, all they do is talk about work and meetings and business and finance. I'm like, oh. Roxanne does end up getting on the conversation of how different Alex is from Antonio, her ex. She says something along the lines of Antonio never had a vision or a path, and that has been very frustrating for her, and that being with someone like Alex and them having a very similar personality that way is very fitting. Okay, so back with James and Raya. If you last recall, they seem to have been getting closer, maybe a little bit, you know, closer. They were in the pool. They was like looking real sexy together. They both real hot in the water, you know. But it seems like since then, there's been a bit of a hiccup as far as the affection between them. It seems that James has tensed up. He doesn't seem to have any physical affection now towards Raya. He doesn't seem to want to hold her hand, doesn't seem to want to give her a hug. And it seems that he's trying to say like, oh, well, I cleaned the dishes for you. That's how I was showing affection. It seems to be a bit of an excuse. Admittedly, he's becoming more and more withdrawn from her. My theory is that he really want to fuck her, but he knows that that's a terrible idea. And so because of that, he can't find the middle ground of just showing non-sexual physical affection. But being that Raya found that she was missing affection in her past relationship, she doesn't feel like she's in a real marriage that she can compare to her last relationship, because there's no affection here either. She's not getting the full experience, which is something that he just can't seem to wrap his head around because he's so on or off when it comes to physical intimacy. Apparently, he struggles with just doing non-sexual physical intimacy. Now, admittedly, I found this very tense and very weird because, like, you can't get a bitch a hug? You ain't never gave a non-sexual hug before? But it would seem that the root of, like, James's anxiety around physicality with Raya is that he doesn't want to cross any physical line because he has cheated on Ryan in the past. So he's afraid to do even anything vaguely reminiscent of that. Again, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because y'all are broken up for this experience. If you're so focused on your original partner, to what degree are you really invested in this experience? You know what I mean? But again, you don't have to have sex, but it seems like he struggles heavily with that. So I don't know. Anyway, on the flip side, Trey and Ryan seem to be doing quite well. They don't seem to be having a lot of trouble living together. They have a lot in common. Things seem to be naturally easy. They're not fighting. Trey does admit that he seems to be developing some feelings for Ryan, which is something that he's incredibly uncomfortable with because, again, he came here to marry Raya. I feel uncomfortable telling you this, but I feel like I should be honest with you and upfront because that's what this experience is all about. Messy. Oh my God. Y'all can pay me to get on this damn show, but okay. Y'all do it for me. Y'all do it for my entertainment. Thank you. Episode 5. This is the episode where we're meeting more friends and family. Alex meets Roxanne's parents, and they seem kind, albeit intense, like Roxanne. They seem to be in a family that is very like strict about certain displays of respect. You know, if you come into their house, you have to focus on them. You can't be on your phone. You gotta help out, blah, 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 which is, you know, reasonable. He asks if he pulls the chair out for her, if he opens her car door. These older, maybe a bit more classic displays of chivalry, I guess. And he's like, yeah, I think I do. And Roxanne is like, boy, no, you don't. Which is just a weird thing to lie about when she's right there. The dad then asks an incredibly interesting question. Would you marry yourself? And I gotta say, Alex, I don't care about what his response to that was. I started thinking myself like, oh, what an interesting question. Would I marry myself? I can honestly say, regardless of how insecure I can get on a day-to-day basis, I am a f***ing catch. I would absolutely marry myself. It was like this impromptu confidence exercise. So thank you, Roxanne's dad. You put a little pep in my step. I was like, I am a bad bitch. With that said, I don't remember what Alex said. Something like, yeah, I think I'm nice or whatever. He's very vague. Whatever. Trey meets Ryan's brother and his girlfriend, the brother's girlfriend. And the girlfriend is definitely the more talkative one. And she's like, so how did it go? How did you know? Blah, 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 blah. And Ryan is like, at the end of the day, whatever happens at the end of this, I know it will be for the best, whether me and James stay together or not. And the girlfriend is like, this seems to be a very big shift because I've observed you, Ryan, make your whole world about James, and I've never felt like he did the same for you. So to hear that you're here focusing on what's best for you makes me so happy and so proud, which is great. It seems like this experience is bringing out Ryan's ability to ask herself what she actually wants from her relationship with James, if anything, or whether or not she wants to stay or go or whatnot. Love that. They have the girls and guys nights out, and things get very awkward because they're talking about their current partners in front of their exes. You know the drill. Again, we've been here. We've done this. More so than any other part of the show so far, this is where it's very obvious the editing team was trying their hardest to make drama out of nothing. It makes it incredibly awkward and hard to follow. James talks about how things have gotten awkward with Raya because she feels like there's the physicality part missing from their marriage. Again, that doesn't mean sex. That means hugging, physical touch, you know, a handhold, something benign, but just feeling of affection. The editing makes it sound like James is like, well, she'd be open to it, sex. It doesn't make sense. Trey's reaction to that information doesn't make sense. He seems way too chill about it. I highly doubt this is how the conversation actually went down. With the ladies, they share their experiences. Kat talks about how cute it is that Antonio is really into like weird stuff like UFOs and conspiracy. Well, I guess the UFOs aren't that weird now. And conspiracy theories or whatever. And she seems to think it's very cute. And Roxanne is like, I hate that shit. I think it's incredibly annoying. It would seem that Roxanne talks a lot about what Antonio lacks, like all the time. Do you even like this? I don't think she does. Granted, again, the editing is quite weird. It's just so flippant to her. It's just so matter of fact. Like, yeah, he has no ambition, kind of a loser. She doesn't say that, but that is the vibe she gives in regards to Antonio, her original partner. But okay. Roxanne talks about how she and Alex would have been open to hooking up with each other. But I don't think this is how that conversation went, just because this editing is so weird. Anyway, back with the men. Alex talks about how tiring it is to be with someone like Roxanne, which is something I saw coming. It's exhausting to be grind in general. Two of y'all? Oh my God. Like, do y'all do anything? Y'all want to go canoeing or some shit? Maybe skiing. Take up badminton. Do a sport. Take up chess. Like, have a life. Do something. Read, bitch. Like, do something. Shit. This is another scene where things are very weirdly edited because Alex isn't really saying much about Roxanne, but for some reason, Antonio is very agitated for no reason and in a way that doesn't make sense. Because again, I feel like they were editing to kind of build up tension that may or may not have been there, or if it was there, they didn't explain why Antonio was reacting so strongly to whatever Alex was saying. But eventually Antonio goes in again about his intense self-loathing, not fixed through the ultimatum. Maybe again, therapy might be, you know, something you consider, my guy. I was a piece of shit, incredibly selfish, and I felt like I had to rise to the occasion to be with Roxanne. I don't know if I can rise up to be the guy with the business and have all the answers because she's the woman with all the answers. I want to be that person for her, but I don't know if I'm good enough for her. And I'm like, oh my God, baby, this is not something you fix on the ultimatum. Antonio also talks about how he's been very hesitant to pursue things in any way physically with Kat. Again, no physical affection, not even talking about sex. We're talking about sleeping in the same bed. If you recall, he's in the air mattress in the living room, which is very weird. And that's what Alex says. He's like, what? That's very weird. Why are you not in the bed? Because again, this is about getting the full experience and you're so off put by doing anything that would insinuate even kind of a real marriage. Granted, Alex says it in the most robotic way possible, but I mean, I don't feel like he's necessarily wrong with this one. It is weird considering Kat is his former partner. And it's funny because earlier in the show, I didn't mention this, but Kat is like, I want you to be jealous, essentially. She was like, are you going to be jealous? And he was like, oh. So maybe he's just not the jealous type, or maybe he just don't give a Antonio then asks if Alex feels like he's any closer to marrying Kat. Alex is like, I'm closer to making a decision. Later, James and Trey have a bit of a heart-to-heart. Again, they have swapped partners, so they have insight on each other's partners. And James is like, let me be real with you. I do not think you guys are in the same position right now. Which, again, I agree on what I said earlier. But I do think it's a bit odd to say that considering you're the partner she's supposed to be doing this trial marriage with and you aren't fully invested in trying to figure out what you can get from the marriage with somebody else. So James seems to think that Raya wants to break up with Trey, like she's ready to walk out the door anyway. Granted, I don't necessarily feel that from Raya per se. I could be wrong. She was quite excited to be flirtatious and stuff at the beginning of like the dating thing, but I don't know. Wouldn't you want to be enthusiastic? I don't know, whatever. And then on the flip side, Trey is like, with Ryan, you know, she wants to marry you. What is stopping you? What is holding you back from proposing to Ryan? I wanted to have this great job. I wanted to be the type of guy that Ryan could brag to her friends about, but I haven't been able to tell her everything about my past and my trauma so that we can get closer emotionally because of that. And I feel like that's the main reason why our relationship struggles. As a side note, well, not really a side note, just like some thoughts I've been having recently around like men and their view of their self-worth via money. I think it's just one of the many situations where patriarchy over everyone. Patriarchy says that men are providers, they're fighters, they are stoic and emotionless or whatever, and so they struggle feeling like a whole person if they don't produce capital. So what's so funny about so many of these people is that even if they're not necessarily in a financially bad situation as a couple, they still feel incomplete as a man if they're not the person making the most money or bringing in the most into the home, which is just fucking silly. All that's necessary is that we are eating. However that happens, we have a roof over our head. Yeah, with Lisa and Brian, well, he was probably lying because Lisa crazy, but his whole thing was like, I want to be financially stable, but Lisa made over 6 figures. So as a couple, like they're not hurting for money, but his identity as a man is tied directly to how much money he can make, which is just a sad and very flat existence. With that said, I need to stop making so many broke jokes, but they're so easy. And I will stop though, because I need to figure out how I as a woman also play into patriarchy. I'm working on it. Hold me accountable. Unless it's very, very funny. Sorry. Anyway, Trey is like, so do you think that your trauma is the main issue that you have in this relationship, you and Ryan? And he's like, yes. And then Trey is like, I feel like I wouldn't be a good person if I didn't tell you that, at least in the conversations that I've had with Ryan, that is not her main problem. That is not the main problem y'all have. It feels like you put everything above her. I asked her, as things stand at the end of this experience, do you see yourself saying yes to James if he were to get on one knee and ask for your hand in marriage? And she said no, which I say good on you, Ryan. Date other people. 7 years. Learn stuff about yourself. Learn stuff about your boundaries. What you want, what you don't want. That South Carolina accent. Won't. Roxanne and Kat talk. And Roxanne is like, I don't like Alex. I don't think he's a gentleman. He seems to have a bunch of like little red flags. He seems to lie a lot about little dumb shit, little white lies. He lied about opening the car door in front of my parents to make himself look good. He lies about hours he's working. And when I come home, he's like taking a nap or whatever. He puts himself on a pedestal about how great he is, which, as annoying as I find Roxanne and the grind, I don't think she's wrong. Like mine's, you know, I find Alex this very intangibly weird person. As annoying as Roxanne is, I don't necessarily find her to be insincere. But I do get that vibe with Alex. I'm telling you what you want to hear because it makes me look good type vibe. Anyway, Antonio and Alex talk, and Antonio's asking about their dynamic, Roxanne and Alex, and he gives these very like vague, non-committal answers. I want to know your motivations in all this. Like, when you're on the show, are you here to break up with Kat or are you here to leave with Roxanne? And Alex is like, neither. To be quite honest with you, I find Roxanne kind of mean, for lack of a better word. I think you're Roxanne's whipping boy. I don't think she respects you. And honestly, again, I can kind of see where he's coming from. Again, I feel like Roxanne and Alex are two like halves of the same coin. Both of them are very like self-important, and I honestly don't find that either of them seem to have much respect for their original partners. I didn't bring this up, but Alex does have a tendency to kind of talk about Kat as if she's dumb. He doesn't say that outright. He just says like, being with Roxanne, someone so smart, I'm not used to that. And I'm like, and then Roxanne is going on about how Antonio has no ambition, how, you know, so they're very similar people. So I wouldn't be surprised that he clocked that she is kind of mean because they're mirroring each other. And well, actually, in fairness, let's go back. I was saying how Roxanne doesn't seem insincere. Honestly, now that I'm saying that, no, I still agree. Roxanne isn't insincere because I find that Alex kind of hides how he feels and thinks and blah, blah, blah. I feel like Roxanne is very direct. They're both equally, I think, disrespectful to their original partners. Like, they don't talk about them in a way that's like caring. Like, yeah, you had problems. That's how you ended up on the show. Again, this whole like browbeating how Antonio has no ambition and how, you know, it seems like Kat is kind of a pushover. Like, both of them aren't particularly nice. You know what I mean? As you can imagine, being that Antonio already has a bunch of anxieties and insecurities around a person like Alex dating Roxanne, a person with all the ambition and the money and the status and the mama, and then hearing from that person that the person that he loves doesn't respect him, Antonio doesn't take that very well. And somehow he leaves this conversation thinking that Alex is trying to steal Roxanne from him. And so he's lying about how she doesn't respect him, which is wild, especially because, again, I don't think Alex likes Roxanne. Again, it's two similar people. Both of y'all are used to being like the showstopper, the center of the universe. Like, two people like that probably don't work out very well. And again, he's said like being with someone so similar is grating and tiring. So again, I don't know how he got that from this experience, but okay. You know, as long as I've been with Roxanne, there's been so many people that's trying to get at her and trying to steal her from me. So I think he's just another one of them. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, so that's how the episode ends. And it does set us up to know that, you know, there's plenty of mess to behold next time on the Ultimatum. Next time on Dragon Ball Z. So with that said, quick little review of the first half. I will say this season seems to be quite inconsistent in its watchability. The first like 2 episodes, a mess. but this season seems to be lulling. So I hope that things get a bit more interesting in the second half. If you've already seen the second half, let me know, because I'm curious. Like, do we get, like, don't spoil it because I want to see it, but like, do things pick up? Pacing seems to be quite awkward and the editing seems to be quite awkward this season. I feel like they're working with no drama and they're trying to make it out of nothing. And now that it's 2 a.m., I think I should bid adieu to you guys. If you like this video, feel free to like this video. Follow me on all my social media, Instagram and Twitter, both of which are KennieJD. Feel free to give me movie recommendations, show recommendations, things that I should watch. And finally, listen to my music. Listen to my album, songs you'd like to hear. If you'd like to hear it, that'd be great. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.
Waste 'cause I got dressed up for you. When I need the starlight, candle fire. You'll see me in the dress you like. You're on fire, and I smell of Tahitian rum.